Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you every single step you need to know in order to build a composite deck like this. I'll talk about the tools and the material. If you're interested in seeing more, such as the pricing, then please subscribe because the next video is going to be all about pricing for this deck in particular, as if you were a contractor like myself, or if you're looking to build this just at your own home or for a relative. All right, let's get right into the steps you need to know in order to build your own deck. I'm going to be relatively informative. If there are any questions you have, or if I didn't elaborate on something, please let me know. Certain things such as code, your residential code for decking or any residential building, I won't completely touch on that. I'll give you links and I'll leave things in the description. But if you'd like to see more of that, please comment and let me know, and I could, teach a little bit more of that in future videos. All right, the first thing you need to do with any construction project is have a plan. You need to have a plan, draw a layout, and think about what materials you need to buy and what tools you need to bring to the job site. Everybody plans differently. However, when I plan, especially when I'm building for a customer, I know if I'm building something at my parents' house or for myself, my tools are there. I really don't have to think too much about it. I just really need to know, hey, I need this material. When you're working for somebody else, you need to have everything there. You need to have both tools, material, and you need a plan as to what you're doing in a given day. That way you move forward. You don't want to be running to Home Depot every day. And I'm not saying we don't run over to Home Depot or Lowe's or any hardware store. Some of you may be seeing this and you have Menards. Not that I haven't had to make those runs. Even with this job, we had to make a few, but it was minimal. Plan and layout. All right, a list of tools that you'll need, a list of everything you plan to do on that given day. And what I really like to do that I don't know, I'm sure people do this, but I draw out kind of what I want the deck to be. I do several layouts as to, okay, our framing. How many boards do I need for joists? How many pieces do I need for our posts? The ledger, what's that detail looking like? What pieces do I need for flashing bolts? You name it, all the miscellaneous stuff. How many screws do I need? As you then have your layout, the next important part then is planning out how many deck boards do I need? How many railing pieces do I need? How many posts do I need? And it might seem overwhelming at first, but you can handle this. You can definitely figure out what you need. And hey, if you make a little mistake, that's okay. It happens. That's part of the learning process. We've made mistakes. The key is fixing those mistakes. When you're aware there's a problem, fix it. You don't half-ass it, and you don't just do something to say, oh, it's done. No, you do the correct thing. So build the right way, take the time to do that. All right, once you have your layout and you're ready to do it, demolition. Demolition is pretty fun. You pretty much just cut it up, rip it apart. If you have good footers, you can leave them and put the posts on those existing. This deck, we didn't even have that. We removed everything. The only part to really be cautious with is where this thing is anchored to the home. This one was attached with just nails into the wall, through the siding. That's not the right way to do it, and we'll get into that on the ledger step. After your demolition, it's time to do your layout and start digging. The layout's very important. We like to do a string line layout of where our deck will be. So for example, this was a 12-foot deck, 8 feet off the house. We did that string layout, and then we also like to do a layout for where the footer locations will be. The footers were 6 feet off the house, so we did, let's say from 14 feet apart, we did 2 areas where it was 6 feet off the house. We put our string line there, and then we just marked out where our footers would go. We just simply marked on the string line where the footers should be, and then we started digging. Another great way to do this would be like a paint can marker. Just spray it right on the ground, spray your circle, and start digging. I'm just going to run through the steps of what we did for this job, and hopefully that helps you with yours. But always ask questions and always research what you need for your specific deck. After the layout and digging is done, it's time to put your footers in. We did a gravel base at the bottom of each hole that we dug. We then put our sonotube in there, and then we started pouring our concrete. Before we poured our concrete, we did put other dirt and rock around the sonotube to kind of hold it in place. Then we poured our concrete footer. While the concrete was wet, we set our saddle in. This is where the string line comes in handy because you want to make sure that saddle is centered on that string. And then the saddle also needs to be set that it is in the right location, or hopefully centered in the sonotube. If it's not centered, that's okay. There can be a slight offset with it. And then, especially for this build, when we had a slight offset with ours, when we put our posts on and our beam, you would never even notice unless you really got under there and started measuring. But just from looks, it looks great, in my opinion, at least. All right. Once those are on, it's time to do your ledger. You can do your posts after that, but we did our ledger. We marked out where it should go on the home. We cut out the siding. You need to get down to the sheathing on the house, and then that's where you're going to put your ledger. Now, we did a flashing detail here that is brought up in code. And so we did flashing that goes up under the siding, and then another layer of flashing under the siding that comes out and over your ledger. This is something that in the future I might put some sealant behind there as well. I'm very confident in what we did that it won't leak or have, short-term problems. Sure, over the course of 30 years, may it experience a little bit of, water going through our nail locations, possibly, or can there be some slight movement there? Yes. But for the longevity of this deck, for the 20 years, I know it's built well and it will last. But there's different ways to do flashing. Definitely look at some videos or read up on that prior to doing that if you're not really sure. If you haven't done it before, read up on it. Once your ledger is in, it's time to do your posts and your beam. Again, we did 3 posts and a beam with everything hanging on top of it. That's not always what you're going to do. So pay attention to the type of layout you're going to have, and this step might be omitted for you. Our posts, though, we put our posts on those saddles. We took a board then and put it underneath our ledger and brought it out to where our post comes up. And we were then able to put a level on that, make sure that was level, and then mark out the line on each post as to where the cut should be. Then we used a speed square around that post, marked it around, used the circular saw and cut it off, and then we used sanders and planers to make that top part flat. We then assembled our triple beam. This is just screwed together, and then we set this on top of this post. On top of the 3 posts, we made sure it was level. We planed down the middle one because we had a little bit of a rock to it, and then we set that there, and it was pretty solid, and it was nice and level, which is the important part. If you're not level there, then you need to, recut a post or something. And that's why in some jobs, you want to make sure you account for a little bit of extra material where those things happen. But that's what we did. We put the beam on there, and now it was pretty much to just hang our joists. The joists then, if you're doing things properly, the joists went super smoothly. We set them off the house. The corner ones we did with corner brackets, we set them on, they pretty much came off the ledger out onto the beam. We then used hurricane ties to tie them in, and then we just did 12 inches spacing for the rest of our joists. We used deck hangers on the ledger, and we used Simpson strong ties similar to hurricane ties on the beam that hold that joist in place. This deck was only 8 feet long with those ties at 6 feet, so we did not need any blocking in between, but longer spans will need blocking in between to prevent joists from twisting. All right, after your joists are done, it's time to do your stairs. For this deck, the deck went from 12 feet back to 8 feet, so we had to pour some concrete. I'll do another video on the concrete pad. Essentially, that was just digging. You do a wood frame layout, gravel base, tamp everything down, pour your concrete, smooth it out, finish it, boom, done. We did that next to an existing sidewalk. But then the stair stringers, there's several ways you can do these. Again, I bought pre-cut stringers. Wasn't happy with them. We bought 2x12 pressure treated, and I drew out with a framing square and stair gauges what we needed. Marked out everywhere where that should be. It was a 6-inch drop, rise, and a 10-inch run. Kept marking that out, cut everything out with a circular saw and jigsaw, and then we had our 3 stringers that we put there on the ground. We also used Tapcon screws to secure them to the concrete, and we used stair hangers to hang them on the deck, and we had blocking behind there as well. Once that was all in, it's pretty much time to do deck tape and start with your composite material. We do deck tape. Not everybody does this. We like it. It's really not that expensive to add it. It is a little bit of extra time, but it's protecting the longevity of your deck and the lifespan because it's protecting that lumber from all those screw intrusions with all your composite decking and everything else. And it also looks cleaner in areas where you don't have fasteners, or where you do have the fasteners. Instead of seeing the pressure treated and the fastener, it's all black down there, and it just looks much cleaner in my opinion, and kind of keeps everything under there hidden, and it keeps people's eyes away from looking at those little things. You just see the deck and it looks immaculate. We've had areas where we haven't had tape, and you could definitely see the difference, and then that's why we would take it up and make sure we get tape under there. After taping's done, at some point in the deck, you'll need to do your posts for your railing. Now, instead of putting our posts into the deck frame and lagging them in and kind of making a box for them, we actually used these plates that screw up into your 4x4 post and that screw down into the decking. On our next deck, we're probably going to go with a different option. This has worked for retreads we've done, but for a new construction like this, they're stable, they don't move. But we probably could have used lag bolts to lag everything into the decking. That way it was, maybe less materials and still very solid. But At some point you might need to do that, or you need to think where your railing is going to go. That way you have blocking where you install it. It's time to do your composite decking. For this deck we built it well, and the plan came together because the deck boards are slightly over 12 inches and our deck frame is slightly over 12 inches because we used the lumber that when you buy it at 12 feet, it's really, let's say 12 feet, 3/4 inches, or maybe whatever the additional amount is on that lumber. It's not always a perfect 12 feet. It's a little more. The same with the deck boards. They were just about that. They did have a little more on them, which was good though, because they had edges that weren't clean. So we used our track saw on both sides after all the decking was installed to just cut 2 clean lines. And that to us is much more professional, and it is easier and looks much cleaner than cutting one at a time and trying to set it in and then cutting each one and measuring it. There's less time measuring, less time cutting, and it's cleaner. You just need to have that tool, or you can use a straight edge and kind of use your circular saw along that. Once the composite's in, it's now time to do your fascia. Fascia is always different for every job, and this job in particular, we didn't have a square edge picture frame where normally we do, and then your fascia's underneath it. This time we had our composite decking and our fascia met that elevation, to cover all those cuts. And it's 12-inch fascia or 10-inch fascia, so it still covers our pressure treated 2x8s, and then it covers the decking. We thought that looked really good. You can do different types of cuts here, mix and match. Everybody has their own styles, but we essentially did our white PVC fascia around the deck, and then we used the white PVC fascia on the sides of the steps as well as the stair kickers. After that part's done, we then did our stair composite tread pieces, and that's because we did square edge on top of all the fascia. Again, there's different styles there where you could have done, a fascia and stairs are very similar to how the deck is, but we think the style we did looks cleaner, and yeah, we wanted to go with that. After that's all done, you're pretty much ready to do your railing. And the railing, we set our posts in the locations they needed to go. We had an 8-foot railing, 2 6-foot railings, another 6-foot railing that we cut, and our 2 stair railings. That's something where you need to kind of measure out as well and think about what types of railing you need and what'll look cleaner. For example, an 8-foot span of railing looked much better here than buying 2 6s and cutting them into 4-foot spans. But it depends on what material and brand you go with. Some railings might not have an 8-foot section, but we knew this railing did. The customer also liked this railing, and that's what we went with. Once that's pretty much done, you're just about done with the decking. The railing, I can't really go too much into. All of these things have instructions, and every single railing we've done to date is different and has its own instruction manual. I just recommend, when you pick the railing you want, maybe look at those instructions prior to the day that you're installing the railing. That way you kind of know what you're getting into, you know what tools you need, you know what type of cuts you need to make, and so forth. But if your posts are set properly, the railing goes pretty smoothly, and it just depends on the bracket systems. I found the Trex railings took a lot more time. We used a veranda railing for this deck. Again, I'll leave links to everything in the description, but the veranda railing we used, this, like a vinyl railing, worked very nicely. Much easier to fasten it to the post versus the Trex railing I found was a little bit difficult. You had to assemble everything, use a ratchet strap to hold it together. It was just more time consuming. All right, after your railing's done, your deck is pretty much done. You just need to clean up, do any additional landscaping. I did forget to mention that in our deck, we did gravel underneath it. Not everybody does the gravel underneath the deck, but for the cost of material, let's say this was an extra, 120 to 150 in material and probably an extra 100. Let's say that's an extra 300 to the customer for doing all the gravel. I strongly recommend it. It is just something that looks so clean, keeps the project out of the mud, and because we did the weed barrier, we leveled the ground, we did the weed barrier underneath, and then we did the gravel on top of there. I thought it worked out really well, and it's just that one little touch that to me completed the deck. I was very happy with that. I never showed this in a video, but we also did some topsoil and grass seed around that gravel area where we had kind of did a lot of digging. And I don't have finished photos of all that yet. I'm hoping to stop by and get photos of that deck eventually. But that's what we did. And pretty much those are the final steps to the deck. And then you get paid. You're happy about it. Or if you did it for yourself, just admire it. Have a beer on it. Relax. Only if you're of age, of course, have a beer. All right, but that's pretty much it. Those are all the steps you need to know in order to build a deck. And as we do more videos, I'll show more. If you want to see more videos like this, please let me know and I'll make more videos on them. Thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. Again, please subscribe because the next video is going to be all about pricing for this deck, and future videos are going to be other construction projects we're currently working on and other decks we've already built. All right, thank you. Subscribe.